please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Next, we move to our regular City Council study session, and I would like to recognize and excuse Councilmember Glover. The first item on our agenda is items on the agenda for the January 11th regular council meeting. So, Council, why don't we work our way through that? I believe currently everything is on the consent agenda. Mr. Richards.
Probably should start out with a little explanation about a Series 6 liquor license and movie theaters getting liquor license, kind of a new thing in Mesa. And we've, I think, crossed the threshold with Starbucks already, but the AMC, this is, a place where a lot of families go. And so maybe we could just kind of hear a little bit about what their plans are at AMC. What Series 6 specifically would allow them to do.
Sure. Great. So we're talking about item 3C, the AMC.
Yes,
Mesa, is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Series 6 license is a full-blown bar license, so they can serve any kind of alcohol on site. They can have a certain amount of off site in their sales if they want to do that as well. But it's a bought over the counter type license. The state does provide some in a lottery system, but otherwise it's an asset that you would own, so you can actually buy those and you maintain those. So, but as far as what they can do with the Series 6, they can serve any kind of alcohol. This is not their first one. They've got one over in Phoenix as well. So this would be the first one in Mesa, though, if we approve this one.
And from what I've heard, there's a movement with the theaters now to go where they're providing a full range of drinks and foods as part of the experience of going to the theater. And I think this is
the other one over
of
the
that
Esplanade's got a full dining, or not really full dining, but they serve food and stuff as well over there. So it's kind of more of a total experience, I guess. But they take steps just like anywhere else as far as making sure that they're properly identified for ID, legal drinking age, and so forth. So.
Yeah, I know there's typically a lot of young people that work behind the counter schlepping popcorn and candy and all that kind of stuff. So what is their plan on making sure that they comply with, they have appropriately aged people working behind the counter? And
yeah, we haven't had any close correspondence with them, but it's, again, with any kind of a bar, wherever, if you're going to serve alcohol, you have to be a certain age. So there'll be certain people that can take and serve the alcohol and also do the IDing and so forth. So, and then there's state regulation too, as far as maintaining that and being audited and so forth. So there'll be people, I'm sure, going out there and making sure that there's proper security in place to handle that.
I may have missed it in the submittal, but I didn't see anything about how they were going to situate that within the building, if the bar is separate from where the popcorn is, or how that kind of works.
My understanding is you can take and drink inside the theater and so forth. They actually bring people.
Yeah, but
you're about the bar.
Where you actually order.
Right.
Yeah.
We can follow up to find out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if we could. I mean, we have time, a couple of days, just by Monday.
Yeah, we can put a
could
call in
see,
and find out.
Just get an
I'll
idea
get a little more detail on how
what
they're
their
actually gonna handle
layout, how they plan to manage that, and with the
So, Councilor,
place.
what we typically expect is the popcorn and soda and nachos, and kind of where does this part of the experience begin and end? Is that what you were kind of looking for?
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to get a popcorn and Diet Coke and a
Shot of
liquor.
vodka.
Yeah, there you go.
You're looking at the mayor.
Vodka.
The mayor's giving you some.
Thanks, Mayor.
Do you want butter on your popcorn or? Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I'll do a little more research on that.
Thanks, Mayor. And again, in terms of history, you may recall that over the past number of years, we've had several proposals similar to this, particularly down in the Fiesta District, following the models around the country where they were having like microbreweries combined with theaters and having the food and alcohol operations. But it is something that's a trend, and certainly a number of developers have spoken with us probably over the past 5 years. Thank you.
I agree. I stumbled into Alamo Draft House when I was in Texas a few months back.
Stumbled in or out?
Stumbled in. I walked very on my own power out. But I tell you, it's tough to go back to a regular movie theater after you be catered in one of these. Right. I get this whole trend in movie going now that people come in and a waitress fills up your Diet Coke and brings you more popcorn or whatever you want. I mean, so I think this is the first of many of these that we'll see. So it's probably a good opportunity to get a little better educated. Sure. It might even be an opportunity for AMC to give a nice little commercial about how they're going to upgrade their movie theater. So I agree with Councilmember Richards. It'd be fun to hear a little bit more about it.
No, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I just want to understand. I need to be able to explain what they're proposing. In our
Maybe the best
community
thing to do
people,
is to maybe see if we can get an an AMC rep to come in and actually explain it, since it's their
Yeah.
business. So
Okay.
we'll work on that and see if we can have them for Monday.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think it'd be a very positive thing. Not that
absolutely.
we're
Right.
scrutinizing it inappropriately, but it'd be fun to know more about this new trend in movie theaters.
Sounds great.
Any other? Okay, so that, Councilmember, that's item in 3C. Let's take 3C off the consent agenda then, unless or until we feel like we're satisfied. Moving on, 3 is additional liquor licenses. 4 are purchase contracts. Mr. Richards?
Just I feel like I'm talking too much. I'm sorry.
No, you're
That's what
not.
happens when you leave me several weeks with an agenda. It's not a good idea. So 4A is there's been several of us that have had conversations about street lighting in Mesa and wanting to increase our street lighting, and I think this is reflective of wanting to step up our energy efficiency related to street lighting. And a lot of the conversations have been talking about looking at there's businesses and companies out there that bring energy efficiency to and additional street lighting within a whole package of almost privatizing streetlights. And I was wondering where that conversation was. I know that there's been some RFPs related to that topic, and Jim, stop me if I wander too far off the agenda, but I just feel a little uncomfortable with this item as we continue to have those conversations, because I don't feel satisfied that they've been advancing quickly enough, or I haven't got at least a feedback loop on where those conversations have, and it's not any particular company, it's the concept, because as I've been explained to it, when I was in on a trip last year, I was able to visit one of these companies that not only does the energy efficiency, but they do the financing and a number of things, and it would be really neat for us to explore a privatization opportunity, if we could, that maintains these streetlights and that increases the number of streetlights. And I mean, you take this particular contract and it goes well beyond that kind of conversation. And so, where's that at internally? As far I know, you guys were doing a study of some kind.
Sure.
So.
Mayor, Councilor Richardson, we are doing a study. In fact, Councilmember Thompson had the same question with another firm. Obviously, the City of Phoenix did an RFP, I believe, to try to look at that, and they ended up canceling the RFP because of all the consultants they had come in. What we asked our consultant to do is do a review of our whole streetlight program and kind of give us some options of the best way to handle these situations. Obviously, we're not just working with the City of Mesa Power, we're working with SRP, and it's how their rate structure is and their metering and all that stuff we have to do. We have to work out all those details. And we're not there yet, but we just got the report from the consultant, the draft report. It has some promising information in there of how we best could approach retrofitting our lights, improving our street light system, and then looking at sections of privatizing. We actually looked at trying to do a pilot program with a firm to do about 10,000 lights of privatization to take a look at it, where they would actually take them over. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sales pitch stuff that comes with those consultants, and when it really started penciling it out, it was not an economical advantage to the City of Mesa to go down that path. So they're still trying to work out the details. This section here is actually just, as we replace a light, we put a LED light back in, so we're just asking for an increase in the ability to purchase more of the LED lights. Along with that, the technology is obviously changing quite a bit in the last, every year it's changing. They're getting more efficient with the LED lighting and getting that's comparable to the high pressure sodium we currently use, but there's still probably a little time in there. The big lamps we have out there's not a retrofit for an LED light for that right now, so we have some big ones out there that we can't replace, but some of the residential areas we can do, so that's what we're working on right now. Okay. But we'll continue. We'll have our consultants, so we're reading through the draft report right now. It gives us kind of a path to figure out some other options, and we're kind of watching Phoenix and see how that process works too. Let them work through their issues. A big chunk of their lights are actually operated and maintained by APS, not the city themselves. So
don't wait around for Phoenix too long. Don't be afraid to lead on the issue, as we do so well on this kind of innovation. And so I really think there's some innovation in the industry that we need to be mindful of. So maybe if you and I could get together and talk a little bit further about that.
We looked at solar. We've been trying to implement solar into some of our bike head projects and various things. So there's a lot of technologies we're looking at. It's just that, unfortunately, we get a lot of sales pitch and we start going through and start penciling out the numbers. It really doesn't equate very well. But we'll continue to. We're always looking at it. That's why we hired a consultant to help us review through this stuff.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. I think all of us, when we go to National League of Cities meetings or even State League meetings, these guys are big. They show up big time, and you can't walk very far without somebody shoving a business card in your hand saying, I need to talk to you about how much money you're going to save when I convert your city to LED lights. So I agree. It would be nice for all of us to be a little more knowledgeable about this so that we're prepared to respond to all of the marketing that we're receiving.
Not a problem, Mayor. In fact, that's why we had an expert look at what we can do. Right now, our rate of return, some of the initial numbers we're seeing, if we switch out a high-pressure sodium light to an LED, is probably 5 to 7 years, which is not bad. Energy savings-wise, it's just that, unfortunately, we don't see the energy savings right off the bat because of the structure of our SRP billing process. So we're going to have to lobby to get our billing structures changed, too.
But it sounds like we are transitioning to LED as things wear out.
It's pretty much the standard is what we're seeing now. I mean, light rail, everything down light rail is LED. So some of our new construction and most of our new construction is LED, and in the replacements we're doing it.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. Richards, you want to leave that on consent for now? That's fine. Okay. The rest of item 4 are additional purchasing contracts.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You're on a roll.
So I was looking at the sedans, 4E and 4G in particular, and we're buying 4 Fords. I think those were $18,000 a piece, and then 2 Chevys that were like $24,000 a piece, or vice versa. I just kind of wanted to understand the rationale of the double. You think of the Southwest Airlines model, right? You know, where you kind of standardize your fleet and it's easy to maintain and stock parts and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of wondering, and then, what's the rationale for 2 of them that we're going to pay $6,000 more for? And so, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor, Councilmember Richens. Normally, we do try to standardize the vehicles in the fleet, but in this particular case, these are detective cars. And in that case, what we try to do is mix up the manufacturers so that we're putting a lot of different manufacturers, different colors of cars, different models on the street every year. So these cars aren't identified easily. The Ford product is cheaper than the General Motors product, but if you look, both of these were competitively bid, and that's how they came in. So normally, if these were just administrative cars, we would go with the lowest possible car, price we could get. But when we're mixing up the fleet like we do for PD, undercover, and detective, this is the strategy that was used.
Yeah, that's Tauruses and what's the other Chevy brand?
Impala.
They're not fooling anybody. You wanted an undercover car? Go get a beat up Chevy pickup. That'll.
We're just trying to de-emphasize that lack of diversity.
Yeah, so I guess it's the undercover part's not the emphasis here necessarily. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they will use it for our street crimes or CIU or admin vehicles. It gives us not only the ability to put them in now, but mix them up down the road between what we currently have and an Impala and a Ford and whatever else we end up down the road.
And if you guys feel this works under current budget restraints, that's fine.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
okay. All right. Just need to understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional purchase contracts under agenda item 4. Several pages. We've been haven't been here for a month or so. And then agenda item 5 are resolutions. Yes, Mr. Thompson.
I just had a question on 5B, and not that I'm not opposed to lighting at all, because I think it actually brings some aesthetics, especially into the Fiesta District. But when I was going through this, I noticed there wasn't a cost associated with this. Would it be possible to see what cost would be associated with the city actually installing and running the electric for those lights?
Yes. We'll get
Okay.
that, yes, sorry.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on, yes, Mr. Luna?
And Beth and I talked about this on 5E. Maybe if you can come and explain. I have, if you drive down McKellips towards Ellsworth, you're going to notice a curve. And so a lot of my residents ask me, well, why is that curve? Are we ever going to straighten that road out? So I just wanted publicly to explain why we're going to maintain it that way.
The action on this agenda is to actually vacate an old easement from way back in 1988. This property was originally state land. It was annexed into the city in 86, and in 1988 they came in and platted it, and then they turned around and sold it to Blandford for the Mountain Bridge development. As part of the Mountain Bridge development, they realigned McKellips, so it actually has a curve in it. And over time, as we platted it and did maps of dedications, we took the old roadway easement that had been platted by state land, converted it to right-of-way for the street, with the exception of this one stretch. This was the old straight line alignment stretch. And so what we're doing with this action is cleanup work. We're essentially taking the last piece of that old 1988 easement and vacating it so they can develop that area south of McKellips.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Smith.
Mayor, if I could just for a moment on 5A, because this is sort of a good news for the city of Mesa. This is a VOCA grant for the city prosecutor's office. VOCA is Victim of Crimes Act, legislation, the federal legislation passed in the 1980s, in which federal criminals pay fines, and then those fines are then distributed out to different state agencies. And we've been able to increase substantially over the next year the amount of VOCA grants that the city will receive, which will result in us being able to provide more victim assistance, victim notification, and victim services for the citizens of the city of Mesa. And I really want to particularly thank John Bellotti and Becky Begay in the office. They did a tremendous amount of work in order to get this. This is a significant increase over the past year, and they came up with the concepts and the services that we're going to be able to provide. And so it's a case in which crime doesn't pay, but criminals get to pay for services for our citizens. And so it's a great service that our citizens get for free.
That's great. Very good. Yes, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Mayor, I have just a comment on 5F.
Okay.
I just wanted to congratulate city staff for recommending this change, helping to recognize and strengthen the partnership that we have with the athletics. It's very small cost to the city. Properties affected are city-owned, and I think it's a nice way to start the year as we get ready for spring training. So I appreciate the work and suggestion on this.
That's great. I'd love to see this turn into a nice newspaper story, because I think this is a really neat idea. I remember one of the vendors actually at the athletics spring training came up to me and said, do you think it's appropriate that the athletics facility is on a street called 6th Place? You know, you don't want to be on 6th place if you're a baseball team. You want to be on 1st place, right? So I think it's a really fun idea. I'm glad we're doing it.
Mayor, we're working on an unveiling ceremony that will happen in February. I think we're working with their schedule, and if by chance Mr. Wolf could come out and join us for that. So we're working on a.
And really, we're talking about a pretty small street. It's not going to.
It dead ends into our facilities.
USPS is not going to be confused at all when we change the address on them like this. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Mr. Kavanaugh, for pointing that out. That's a neat story. Mr. Richardson.
Well, Jim mentioned good news agenda items. Excuse me. I forgot to mention the CNG garbage trucks. 10 more natural gas garbage trucks coming into the fleet. That's really exciting stuff. They've been received by my residents, have commented on them. It surprised me, actually, and they commented about how much more quiet they are, and you don't have the same exhaust. So it's really exciting to see that program. And then I noticed there's another agenda item to continue to build our infrastructure to support that fleet. And so two really good things. Purchasing the gas from our own companies, it's saving us a tremendous amount of money. And so kudos to the team at Solid Waste and Facilities that have pulled together these two agenda items on the agenda here. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Smith. I think that the increasing our victims assistance program, that's another great story that I appreciate you pointing that out. Council, anything else on item 6? Yes, Mr. Finter.
6E, I'm going to go ahead, after visiting with our city attorney, recused myself from that. I own some property that's in close proximity to that address, and I thought it just for prudence sake to stay out of it, so thanks.
Thank you. Understood, Mr. Finter.
Just real quick, just could we get a little refresher about what that distance is when you own property? What's the distance?
So historically, we've used sort of as a rule of thumb 300 feet, but it's a rule of thumb.
Right.
So it's really one of those in which it's just simply to provide guidance. It's not somewhere within the conflicts statute, and so you really have to look at the nature of the development and how it affects the development in which you live in and property that you own. I mean, ultimately, the test is whether or not there is the statute is pecuniary and proprietary, but it's really financial or ownership interest for. And whether or not there is. And the city also, even sort of in an overabundance of caution, has a history in which there's a potential appearance of conflict. Council members have. And so, that distance is just a rule of thumb.
Thanks. I mean, you prompted in my mind that we hadn't really talked about what that looked like in a while, so it's always good to have a refresher when we have something like that come up so we can understand how that works. Thank you.
So we'll need to take that item off the consent agenda because Mr. Finter won't be able to vote on the consent agenda otherwise, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Council, anything else on item 6 or 7? 7 is we're getting into some subdivision plats and zoning matters. Okay, so by my count, we're taking 6E off the consent and then also the question related to just kind of the update on the liquor license.
Yeah, I'd imagine that'll go back on. But.
Yeah, if you're right, we could get that briefing in the next study session or...
Yeah, I'm going to try to get it something by Monday.
Yeah, okay. Great, thank you. Then the next item on our agenda for the study session is appointments, item 2, appointments to the Library Board, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and the Early Childhood Education Task Force. Any questions, Council? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Thank you. Motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Item 3 is acknowledge receipt of minutes of various boards and committees. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you. In a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. Next item is to hear reports on meetings or conferences attended. Council members, anything you'd like to share with us? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5. Mr. Brady, scheduling of meetings and general information.
We'll have our first council meeting of the new year on Monday, so we'll see you then. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Richards.
Yeah, one item under this. I just wanted to say thanks to our PIO department, Steve Wright and the volunteers and interns and folks that work with him on the success of the ice rink. And they spent a lot of hours volunteering, helping run that smoothly. And I just wanted to say thanks to that group for the amount of time that they spent and for the great feeling it had in our community. A lot of chatter. People really, really loved it. I got asked several times if we plan on doing it again next year. So, I don't think we give quite enough recognition to folks, and so I just wanted to publicly say thank you to that group and for the time and sacrifice that they went through to make sure that was successful. So, Steve and crew, thank you. If you could pass that along to your crew, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, and let me second that. I agree. I tried to frequent the ice rink, and it was fun to see Mr. Wright and a lot of other people out on the Zamboni and doing things that I had no idea they had actual practical skills, and it was really a lot. Thank you for pitching in and making that such a success. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I thought it was very well received by the public as well. Thank you, Council. Hearing nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We're adjourned.